Welcome to the July 12th, 2022 Evanston Preservation Commission meeting. So first thing I would like to do is I would like to welcome the newly appointed Commissioner Amanda Ziem. We are honored to have you as part of our commission.
Thank you. I'm smiling under here.
So we only have one case tonight, and it is continuing from last month. So I will skip the formalities for meeting procedures, and we will go straight into just old business. First thing though, I would like to, I guess I have to call to order the July 12th, 2022 meeting. It is 7:04 p.m. We have 9 commissioners present, which is a quorum. We don't. Okay, so why don't we go straight into old business? And the first case for that is 1210 Maple Avenue for the certificate of appropriateness to construct a new 2-story single-family residence. And then, Nate, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Nate Kipnis. I'm the architect. I live in Evanston, and very happy to present this. And we've got some changes that were based on the comments from the last meeting, and I'd like to go over them. So, there were a series of comments about, primarily about the front facade and about the bay and the overhang. And so there were a couple things that we did to modify that. So we have, the main thing is we have a continuous overhang now. So it's cantilevered, which is in character with the modern home. And what we did with the bay is we simplified the bay and we made it project over the roof eave so that it becomes similar to other projections in the neighborhood. You can see other roofs break through that plane. Other bays break through that plane, so we're doing that as well. We clad that bay and a little side component, a little planter wall in siding. So we have 2 materials on the building. We have stucco, which is on a number of the homes, and we have siding. So we're relating to the materials in the neighborhood. And we have one very, very fine little piece, which is this little projection here, a 5/8 inch projection, so that the proportions, so it didn't look so tall. And that'll be just a simple shadow line. And really that's about it. We also moved the building into position better. I think we misunderstood where the front of the building could and should go, so it's in line with the other buildings now. And I would also like to show, this is the view of the neighboring buildings. We were asked to kind of look at it in a little bit more totality. I guess I would say there are no, the buildings are all different in the neighborhood. So these lines line up with certain parts, but honestly, none of these are going to be an exact copy. It's almost like it's an average. And even that, it really varies a bit. But let me just go through some of this. There's a yellow line here. I'm going to zoom in and then I'll zoom right back out. This yellow line lines up more or less with the height of this building, which is 2 to the north. I mentioned in the last meeting we can't go really any higher than what we're going because of the current zoning code, which is different. These buildings would not necessarily be able to be replicated. It's somewhat similar to the one on the end. This one to the south, 2 to the south, is somewhat of an outlier in that it doesn't have a porch and it doesn't have a dormer or anything like that. The next line down is our bottom of our upper roof, and that lines up, I need my glasses here, that lines up with the 2 adjacent buildings. And then we have the line of our overhang. So now we're lower because of what we talked about last time with aging in place. So we're not going to be 6, 7, 8 steps up. This more or less lines up with the other ones, and I'll show you that in a minute, the view from inside of there. And then this pink box, again, is more or less the size and height and proportion of the adjacent porches. Not exact. Again, if you look at these 5 buildings, they are all very different. You know, the one to the 2 to the north is quite a bit narrower. The one directly to the north is the widest one. So there's a range of them. But what we've tried to do is make sense of that. And so here's, I'm going to go on to the porch now. And so this is the view when you're on the porch looking to the neighbor, and then the other direction looking to that neighbor. And this is, that'll give a little bit better sense of it. And I can also just walk you from the front in here just so you can see it. And I can turn the landscape on just to show that. So that's the entry sequence, and then the adjacent neighbors again. So I tried to listen to the comments that we had last time, and I tried to respond to them. I think that the horizontal element unifies that in a very modern way. It's cantilevered like a lot of modern buildings are. It's not supported with ties or rods or anything, which always never looks right to me. And that's what I've done. I can go through the standards, and I think I've shown a lot of this, but if you need to, if anyone wants me to, I can reference them while I'm speaking. So the first one about height shall be visually compatible with the adjacent properties. And so again, that's what we tried to do with the height limit that we were set at. The first floor ceiling is 10 feet tall, and I think it's interesting to understand why the old buildings were done like that, especially when people were shorter. It was for the heat to rise up in the summer, and we're doing that again because that makes a lot of sense for the high performance building that we're doing. The proportion of the facades, the relationship of the width, height of the facade shall be visually compatible with the neighboring properties. So the proportion of the facade and its massing was carefully designed to have its proportions relate to the adjacent structures. The proportion of the openings, the relationship of the width to height of windows and doors shall be visually compatible with the neighbors. So again, there's this range. What we're trying to stay away from, in a modern building, you could easily have horizontal windows. We obviously didn't want to do that. These are proportioned, looking at how the other windows and doors in the neighborhood are set up. Rhythm of solid to voids in the facade. The relationship of solids to voids in the facade of the structure shall be visually compatible with the neighbors. The home 2 to the north and 2 to the south have lower window-to-wall ratio, while the homes immediately to the north and south have higher window-to-wall ratio. So we're somewhere in that range. The rhythm of spacing and structures on the street. The relationship of a structure or object to the open space between it and adjoining structures shall be visually compatible with the neighbors. So by infilling this lot, we take away obviously the problem of a hole in the urban fabric, and we've broken down the mass of this with the major mass and a minor mass. I mentioned that last time, and so that's somewhat typical of almost every house in the neighborhood. The buildings align with the front facade of the neighboring buildings. The unusual one is that the building to the north, turn off the trees here, the building to the north, because of its impermeable surface characteristics, they ended up, when they sold the property, taking more than splitting it in half. So there's a bigger gap here, but that was a circumstance that we didn't have any control over. The rhythm of entrance, porches, and other projections. So obviously we want to relate to the neighbors. The entry to this house is offset to the north, and it's very typical of the homes in the neighborhood. Typically have an offset entry, and then it has now the continuous covered porch. The relationship of materials and texture, again, we're using the two materials that are common in the neighborhood, stucco and siding. The roof shapes, the roof shape of the structure, including any roof-mounted equipment, shall be visually compatible with the structures to which it is visually related. So, again, you see these projections of the dormer elements, and we're showing that in a simplified form, poking above the roof. The walls of continuity, the facades and property and site structures form a cohesive wall, and so that goes to the alignment of the buildings, and it also is a similar facade. So that rhythm, again, except for this gap, that rhythm is going throughout the street now. The scale of the structure, the size and mass of the structures in relation to open spaces, windows, door openings, porches, and balconies shall be visually compatible. So again, we're breaking up the mass here, similar to a lot of the other homes. And again, the covered porch aligns plus or minus with the neighbors. Directional expression of the facades. So this definitely is, like most of these, they're asymmetrical. So this has some symmetry and some asymmetry, just like some of the other buildings on the block, most of the other buildings. 12 and 13 do not apply. 14 is the innovative design. So I mentioned this before, the home is planned to be Evanston's first certified passive house. So super tight, very highly insulated, mechanically controlled, efficient ventilation system. It's designed to be net zero, meaning it produces more energy than it uses. It will be an all-electric home to decarbonize its operational energy use and has on-site electric car charging. As far as we are aware, this is the first home to use a carbon-free water vapor fireplace. So what is that? So that is this. Let me show you. This is actually like a humidifier that's lit with LED lights, and it has noise and it produces heat with a fan. So we've done this now in one house. We've got about 3 others that we're about to do, and I think it's kind of fascinating. There's a number of stores now that are selling these. The family room has an integrated light shelf, and we mentioned that before in the back. That's this area back here. So that shades the sun in the high sun in the summer, and it reflects the sun off of this shelf deep into the space for daylight. And then the last point about natural ventilation and daylighting, that's a pretty common feature of older homes before energy was cheap, so we're utilizing that as well. And then the last one, new construction. Considering new construction, such as a new freestanding structure, the Commission shall not impose a requirement for the use of a single architectural style or period, but may impose a requirement for compatibility. So the design is clearly modern, but we've tried to integrate a lot of design features that relate to the neighborhood and adjacent structures. So I think that's all I had. I know there were a number of letters the last time that were against this. I saw there were 5 letters that were for it, and I understand there were 2 that came in at the end that weren't in favor of it. I don't know that I should read them, but I imagine you guys have seen them. So if you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you for really taking the effort to provide a lot more information in regards to the standards and how you came about your decisions, including that with the rendering and the modeling. I think that it's been very helpful.
Well, it's been helpful for us too. I think that I think we did a better job this time, so.
So, with that, why don't I open it up for commissioners to ask questions of Mr. Kipnis? So actually, and then I'll start. I have one question. I think the one area that my mind goes to is the termination of the top of the bay window, which you said you were mimicking the dormers of the adjacent buildings. And I completely understand that you're battling with that modern version of what a dormer should be, which is a very complicated type of application. I think I have a question about how you came about to the proportions of that top siding, the top of the bay window, and how you decided on the proportions of the top versus the window height of the second floor windows.
That's a great question. So we, this is not science, so some of it was very subjective, and I think we just played around with it till it looked right. The windows were wanting to be compatible first floor, second floor, and then we just capped it, and we were just looking at like how high should we go. I don't know, again, I don't think we had like, the golden section or anything like that in mind. We just ended up at that height. We didn't want it way too high. We wanted to clear the top of that and not make it just slightly above that. So I don't have an exact answer.
And is the ceiling in that, I think it's your bedroom that's in the second floor when I looked at the plans, right? There's two bedrooms up there.
Bedrooms, right?
I mean, your eye really draws up to the top of that termination of that bay window, which then kind of draws your eye to how you're fighting with that dormer modern, right? And I was just curious, is it the first floor windows are very much aligned at the top of the door, the top of, the rest of the windows. There's a very strong horizontal to the top of your windows, whereas in the second floor, it looked like they were naturally offset regardless.
So those other windows, these windows up here, these are in actually pretty minor rooms. So, I shouldn't say it. These are the bedroom windows, but we've got the big windows here. And there's also on the side, there's the window here. So this one bedroom, the wall is right here. So that one has one window, a side window, that window, and I believe this is part of that room too, I think. And then the other one has two windows, but no side window, and then it has this window. So it was kind of a little balancing act. This is a closet, that's the primary bedroom, walk-in closet. That's a bathroom down on the first floor. So these are minor rooms. So there's definitely a little difference between the bay. And the bay just was kind of like, these are the tall windows.
And I didn't have any objections to the difference in the two. My question would just be is there a potential to maybe increase the height of the second floor bay windows to try to even out the proportions of the top of that bay? And then my fellow commissioners can obviously jump in if I'm speaking out of turn. I just get stuck a little bit at the proportions of the top of the bay. And I was just curious if it is even feasible to make those windows taller.
These three windows, the four windows there? I could look at that, yeah.
Well, and I'd rather hear from the rest of the commission too. I'm not trying to. You want to jump in, John?
Yes, I think it's a good point you're making. I think it will make the solid part of that bay appear a little bit lighter. I don't know if it's a matter of moving the windows up. I don't know if the sill line can come up or stretching the window head itself, or the third option would be some form of transom. I wonder if we could rotate around to the rear elevation where you have a light shelf and see if there's a similar vocabulary there that would allow those windows to go up higher. Not that I want to add in the light shelf, but there's a there might be a case to be made for a transom so that the proportion of the lower windows there would read the same as the first floor.
It sounds like there's a couple different ways, sorry, Stuart, that it could be achieved. I think my biggest thing, like you said, John, is just the proportionate to the solids to the voids for the bay. Stuart, do you want to add?
Yeah, well, I would think as part of that, I don't know that the windows in the bay should be that much bigger than the ones below, which I think is awkward, or the ones adjacent. But I think that the amount of solid siding surface that you have sitting above them proportionally seems really heavy, or top heavy, and then I would call attention to the amount of stucco surface above the heads of the second floor windows in comparison to, you know, everything around where the windows typically are much closer to the eaves. And I'm just wondering how you came to that kind of proportion of surface to opening.
Again, this is not like a mathematical equation. So this was us looking at it and knowing that we had minor windows up in this area and that our major view was in the bay. But I can certainly look at this, I believe so this is a 7'8" head height right now, and I want to say we have a 9-foot ceiling there. I'm not sure. We probably have some room to raise this up, which would be fine, and we probably have the ability to raise these up slightly as well. These look to
Maybe, you know, on the back, that light shelf actually turns down and makes an L form. I wonder, and I like the idea that you've actually taken elements that you've invented for the house and then reiterated them. But if you look at the kind of proportions of the piece in back, both the horizontal and then where it turns down, and then you look at the front, I'm wondering, you know, whether or not that bay, you know, whether or not the vertical leg and the horizontal piece could be closer in proportion. Why it needs to go up and intersect the roof when it's so clearly and distinctly a contemporary element and so clearly and distinctly really different looking from all of the bays on the other houses. You know, I would say either you go closer to the bays in the other houses or you make something that works with them but is more distinctly different and more consistent with the vocabulary you've created.
Again, I think if you look out built modern house, you will likely see flat roof, horizontal windows. There's a whole series of things that we're trying to avoid in this area. So we're trying
You
to
have a flat roof on the bay, so
I understand
how did you
that.
decide to do that?
Right.
And why?
But we're not wanting, I don't want to make this like some postmodern thing with an arch on it or something. So,
I don't think we want you to.
no, I don't think anyone does. But, the notion is that this is an element intersecting a roof, just like that's an element intersecting a roof. That one has its own type. If you walk down the street, you'll see various versions. Again, that one on the end is an outlier. It doesn't have that. I think there's one other on the block that doesn't. I think the idea was that, yes, this is very modern, but it is responding to those components. I wouldn't want this below the roof line.
And I think we need to evaluate it based on the standards and not try to base it on a style of design. So are there any other questions, Commissioner? Go ahead.
Hi, I I just want to say I did look at the previous version, and I did review the packet from June just to be up on this case. I went for a site visit today, and I just want to echo what some of the commissioners were saying. I did feel like the bay stood out to me. I almost preferred it in version 1 that you had in June. But I do want to just say that I thought the porch design that you did on this version was much more harmonious with the other neighbors and the porch design. So I want to, just say that I thought that was great. I just was wondering, piggybacking off the dormer conversation, if you had considered putting dormers on the 3rd floor attic instead of trying to extend that 2nd floor one up, to sort of bisect or, cut through the existing roof.
So this house, as it's a passive house, has an unbelievably tight budget for heating and cooling. So we don't have a basement. We are trying to really compact the conditioned space. There's no way we're going to have a 3rd floor on this. We're not going to have windows up there. These are all heat loss problems. We're trying, this is a wild balancing act. Like, here's the historic part, here's the energy efficiency part, let's make it look like a nice house. There's a lot of things, a lot of plates spinning on this, and that's the sum of the effort is what you're seeing.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but from our point of view, we have to, make sure it's compatible, and I just was a little, wondering about standard 8 with roof shapes, and every house, what was notable to me when I walked the block today was almost every house had like a 3rd floor dormer or a gable roof, so it did have sort of a distinct, like, triangular kind of shape that this house doesn't have because of the way it's situated.
Not that one, and not a couple others. I mean, the thing is, it's not like we're building in Schaumburg where like, hey, here's, home
Yeah, I'm not
number A, B,
suggesting
and
that.
C, and now all of a sudden we got D here. And there's a wild variety of homes, even in the 19 others or 20 that are on the block. So what we're trying to do is kind of look at the average of it and try and respond like that.
Are there any other questions by commissioners?
So I was looking at the perspective that you have with the street. There's a wall on the, was it on the north end by the front door, on the right of the front facade, but there's no wall on the left. So like when you're looking at it, perspective, looking at what is that, southwest, the house adjacent, has a higher porch than your porch on the house. But, and when you look at the other way, with the north, you see that wall, I guess, is at the height of the adjacent porch. So, so when visually you're looking at it, you see that relationship of, on that side, but on the other side, there isn't really that relationship. So I was wondering why you decided one side and not the other.
I think,
Just because of the primary entrance.
why is this not matched on the other side?
Yeah.
I think that one of the tenets, certainly one could say about a modern house, is it's not necessarily symmetrical. This isn't like a four-square or something, so it's got an offset entry. There's the planter just kind of demarking the edge of that. A little nod to the neighboring porch, and a little nod to our bay lower windows. So, and that's about it. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine a wall on that left side.
I keep hesitating on, I think we often walk a fine line between making sure that the standards are met, and I think this version does a much better job than the last version at taking into consideration the neighborhood, the key features, while not, the standards don't require that they're replicated exactly or things like that. You know, it requires that you take these features into consideration. There are nods to them, and yet you can be innovative and creative with your design. So I just think we have to be careful of nitpicking and think about the major strokes and what are, you know, which is very hard, you know, as design professionals and things like that to you know, nitpick designs or whatever. But I think that this version is much better and takes into consideration where the home is going, and we should consider that.
Make the eave line on the primary gable structure, was that kind of mostly a nod to keeping your massing and bulk somewhat similar to the neighboring properties?
That was definitely picked up from the neighboring. These two buildings are somewhat similar. Again, everything is a little different building by building, but these two had a pretty strong line there. So we did pick that one up very intentionally. As I mentioned before, some of the other ones are more of an average, but that one was one strong one.
I think it helps in terms of us not getting like a sort of a depression as you look at the streetscape. It is something that creates a little bit of a problem of the amount of height of the bay and the feel of stucco above the windows, though. But I see how we got there, and I think it's a fair trade-off so that we don't get the sort of deep U-shaped canyon when we look at your house.
Are there any other questions by commissioners?
Just one quickly, the roof edge on the canopy, Nate, how high is that, including the coping, roughly?
It is a 10-foot first floor. I believe that's 10 feet clear.
Just the height of the edge itself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me hope I can tell you. 1'4".
Okay, assuming probably 12-inch framing and a coping.
And the slope. Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, honestly, that's got a little bit of play left in it, but proportionally, I think that's about right.
Okay.
If there are no other questions, then I think we should ask for public comment on this case.
The first speaker signed up is LJ. The microphone should be on already.
The green one? Oh, yes. Great. Well, good evening. My name is LJ Rule. It's nice to see you again. I was here last month about this topic. And in that ensuing month, I hope you had a nice time and that you all had the opportunity to take a walk on our beautiful historic block to kind of see the homes for yourself, as the renderings do not do justice to the homes on our street. I come here to ask you to oppose this redesign. While it is better than the one from last month, it still does not, in my view anyway, and some of my neighbors as well, who could not be here tonight, does not blend in very well with the neighborhood. I've lived on the block for 17 years, as a reminder, and I live across the street, so I'll have to watch the entire construction process as it occurs. Fundamentally, the design isn't all that different from what was proposed last month. Some things remain unchanged, like the grade of the front area is still about 2 feet, if memory serves, from the drawings. That has been visually rendered with the side wall by the door and the darker coloring on the front horizontal panel to create depth in the drawing, but fundamentally the porch is still very low and will be noticeable when you walk up and down the block. The asymmetry of as the gentleman here had commented, the asymmetry of the wall on the right versus none on the left might not be that bad if the porch was of similar height to its, the houses on either side of it. That's noticeable when you walk up and down the street. While the overhang that has been added in this design does try to address the lack of porch issue that was brought up last month, there's no vertical element, and I'm not counting that thing by the lower bay window that's part of the dormer. There's no vertical element to kind of contain the porch like the other porches on the streets. So that will also stick out like a sore thumb. There's no gable on the front facing. Gables came up last month as well. There are some other inconsistencies with the rest of the homes on the block, meaning the metal roof. None of the homes have metal roofs. The asymmetry of the dark, I'm going to call it siding, that's encasing the second floor and the first floor bay windows is considerably thicker, and it looks like somebody attached on a Lego piece to the front. It doesn't look seamless into the design of the home, even though the rendering might appear that way. So it would be nice to extend the roof line out farther so it can be viewed similarly with the surrounding homes. And the porch roof could be extended and sloped toward the front to be more in line with the neighboring homes. There's been a lot of public comment and also comments made by the commission members regarding sustainability and how great that is, and I agree, sustainability is great, but the material point, in my view, is the suitability and congruity of the design to the rest of the block. We all on the block have been longtime homeowners and have had to stay within standards to keep up our homes, and it's expensive to do it that way. But we've all done that because when we bought into the block, we knew it was a historic home neighborhood, and we liked it the way it looked, so we bought into the home there. And I would ask that the petitioner for this proposed home respect that, because that does not appear to be the case. And with regard to Mr. Kipnis's 5 letters being in favor of this design, if you read closely, you'll notice that one of the letters was written by someone who doesn't even live on the street. So, and 2 others commented that they were pleased to see some of the changes, but had suggested additional alterations. So they weren't all necessarily in favor. One letter didn't comment really on the design at all. So I ask you to oppose this redesign, and I thank you for your time and consideration of my comments.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Peter Segal.
Good evening. I also oppose this design. While I appreciate some of the moves made to try to address the comments from the last time, I think it still falls short of it actually being appropriate for this particular neighborhood. Particularly incongruent is the entry sequence, the front porch. I understand the concerns about wanting to be able to, be able to get in the house without a ramp or an elevator or other some type. But it is a rather substantial lot, so there probably is plenty of opportunity to come up with something. But I think that's a very jarring element to me. I'm also a little concerned about, in reality, when the house goes for permit, it's shown that the front porch is 2 feet above the existing grade, and if that was the case, my understanding of the code is that it's going to require a guardrail, which is in Brent's County. It's not 2 feet.
That's specific.
That's what the drawing showed.
Yeah. Drawing says
Put
2 feet.
11, so
Okay. Still, I think that where I was going with that is that if if this rendering is what's going to exist and it's not going to be shrunk because of the need for some guardrail because of the code, you're going to end up with something very incongruous to the community. I think that the attempt to project the roof of the canopy out to sort of form a porch is in the right direction, but it's still not quite there. It doesn't sort of address what normally those porches are as a sort of semi-public, semi-private kind of space. It's a little more open than what is traditionally used as a porch where people hang out and observe the street and make it safe. Is more just as a plinth for entering the house. And to me, while there are many comments about other elements of the design, to me that's the one that stands out the most as being alien to this neighborhood. So I would encourage you to ask the petitioner to go at it one more time and see if we can't come up with something that's a little bit more respectful of the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there's anyone else who would like to speak, you can step to the podium. Just make sure to announce your name, you sir. Please state your name when you come to the podium and also your address.
John Dujon, my house is 2 houses to the north, 1220 Maple. And just a very brief comment, I feel that the concerns of the commission have been addressed. Things could have been pushed a little bit further perhaps, but for example, that center portion could end up in a gable. It could almost be an aesthetic or a fake trim on there, but it's not essential. I have one question that intrigued me that has nothing to do with this. Why is the entrance door so small? You wouldn't be able to take any furniture.
you know what? It looks small. It's 8. Margaret's a basketball player, so I think she's always wanted a taller door. We've had other clients like this that have wanted like really tall doors. That's an 8-foot door, and I think it's 3'4" wide. Actually, I can check that, but good point. Yeah, 3 foot by 8-foot door. You'll be able to get furniture in there. And we can't make it wider because of what's inside. I can't explain that now, but the stairs are right there.
Jessica Cooksey, 1208 Maple. We're in the home immediately adjacent to the proposed structure. My husband, Nishant, and I purchased our home 4 years ago. I was raised in Evanston from age 1. And we're very respectful of the need for stewardship of a historic home and a historic neighborhood. But we also think that the priorities of building a home that allows for aging in place should be prioritized. As the adult child of 2 sets of parents who are currently aging in place in Evanston, we've firsthand seen a lot of those challenges. And looking for ranch-style homes and moving out of bungalows into condos because of these kinds of considerations have been sort of at the forefront of our family's minds. So we support the current proposed design and we welcome Margaret to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there's no other public comment? Okay. Nate, as long as you don't have anything else you would like to add, then why don't we go into deliberation for the commission? Does anyone want to start? Go ahead, Jeannie.
I'll just say that I think that the issues that were brought up during the last meeting have been addressed and each of the criteria has been discussed and
substantiated, and I think this is definitely better than what we saw last month.
I would agree just with my comments. I do think, Nate, you are walking a very fine line of balancing many things that are current issues with design right now, with the aging in place and sustainability and different styles. We obviously, as a commission, for standard 16, we're not allowed to impose a style on a home. So I don't think it's really appropriate for us to force historic elements, on such a modern style home. So I do think you took a lot of time and care to listen to what was said last month, and again, I'd like to say that I appreciate all of the information brought forth in this revised submission. There are items, like areas that I obviously have a little bit of concern with, but it's nothing that in my mind would say that this was not an appropriate solution. So they're just things maybe to think about. But I as well think that the standards that were brought forth last month are addressed in this revised submission. Is there anyone else that would like to make any comments or discuss any other issues? Stuart?
Yeah, Nate, I think you've demonstrated that the design that you've done meets the standards as listed. There seems to be some disagreement among the commissioners and the audience as to how well and how skillfully you've done that, but that's not our purview to actually make judgments about. I simply want to say that voting for this scheme makes me as uncomfortable and unhappy as voting against it.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, I just, some of us mentioned being uncomfortable with the bay, and so I didn't know if we think that doesn't necessarily meet the standards, if that's something that can be sort of modified, or, I mean, a few of us mentioned it seemed top heavy, it doesn't necessarily fit with the other dormers on the street. It's just wondering, like, if there's concern around that, do we approve with a condition? Is there a continuance? Do you just have to vote up or down? Like, how does that work?
So that's a good question, and I think we should discuss it. So there's a couple different ways. We can obviously provide direction, and if we want to see it again, we can continue it again to next month, if that's the consensus of the commission. If we think that it's minor changes that can be done administrative review with Carlos and Cade, then if we're all in agreement on that, that's another option. Or you can obviously vote as is. So I think that as someone who brought up the proportions of the bay, I think it would be a conversation if other commissioners want to bring up specific elements, or if we want to discuss that further, then we should do that now.
I think the applicant has met the standards. I do think the design of the front bay as a design matter is bothering a lot of us. And I mean, I think we should approve it, but I'd like to, again, we, it's not our job to approve what we think of the design, but I think I would hope that the applicant would continue to look at and improve that element. I mean, it is the mass of it is pretty jarring. I don't think we need to condition our approval on it. I don't know whether it's, we would ask the applicant, look at it and come back, without diminishing the approval, but that's probably up to the commissioners.
What I don't want to see is the second floor window height get larger than the first floor window height and throw those proportions all out of whack. So I don't want that to be the result of trying to make this mass smaller. I think that as it is preferable than making that change.
And what about John's comment about a transom window? I assume that, Jamie, you're saying is the same type of effect that you would be,
Yeah, it's kind of grandizing the second floor over the first.
is that how other commissioners would feel about the second floor window?
It's hard to know without seeing it, so many of these comments we're making, but I think that there's a good likelihood of that happening. What I want to add is that the condition that's creating some of these problems is the height of the eave itself, and I think he's made the right decision on where that's located though. So an alternative is to push the roof of the bay down under the eave, but my suspicion is that that will exacerbate the visual amount of stucco over the windows, and that element projecting above the eave line actually helps.
And I do feel that if we start to tweak this in every different way, it might never end. And as Mark brought up, I don't really feel like that should be in our purview. I think we should be looking at the compatibility as a whole. John, you brought up that the eave height is actually quite compatible with the adjacent homes. So where there's notes that are being made that are very compatible, I think it's going to result in these minor elements that we just don't want to, I don't feel that we should be micromanaging those elements. I think we should be looking at a whole. And if we do have constructive elements that we feel do not meet the standards, then I think we need to aim and try to really figure out what those are tonight. Otherwise, I would suggest that we try to move forward to maybe making a vote.
Yeah, Susie, I would concur with what Mark said. We're not here to ultimately pass any kind of aesthetic judgment. There were comments made about the bay. I think a lot of us feel that it is heavy and clunky looking, but the question was put to Nate that that's the way he thinks it should look. That's the way he's designed it. So I think that he, as Mark said, in my opinion, he's demonstrated the ways in which his house is meeting the standards. So I think we should vote on it.
I haven't said anything yet, so I just wanted to speak up to say that I do think that it has met the basic requirements for the standards. Many of the details here are thoughtful and elegant, so to have a dark rectangle hovering up there seems out of place, but it is not our job to do anything about that.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the commissioners what they thought about standard 8 roof shapes. That's come up a number of times in the feedback from the community. And I just wanted to hear what people had to say about that standard. Given that a lot of it is like a gable, and I'm not suggesting that, but I just wanted people to weigh in on, what they think about that.
So my comment would be is that I do appreciate that there is a gable and not just a flat roof, which we see often in a modern home. I realize that it is not a forward-facing gable, which is what the adjacent homes are, but I do think that, in my opinion, the gable itself is still compatible to the adjacent homes, because I think we fight a lot with modern styles that come in and have a very sharp, flat edge, and that in some ways creates a much different, less compatible design element. But if my fellow commissioners want to say anything in relation to the roof.
So those are hipped roofs though, right? So they're also, on both sides, they're sloping away from the front.
These are gable roofs. The house down the block is a giant hip roof, like that one.
Yeah. But the one in between, that's a hip roof, that one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's sloping away,
Yeah.
just like yours.
Yeah.
And the next one down, that's a hip roof also.
Right, but
So
this is,
they're all sloping away in the same way that
I mean,
this
there's,
one is, so.
if you look at all the homes on the block, there aren't two of the same. I mean, there's a wide variety of how the roofs are created there. but I've been listening.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't see that there's any.
Well, there's a lot of dormers, either dormers that have that triangle kind of shape or the gable front side. Like, 'cause this is only showing like 3 houses, but if you look at the whole length, I mean, it's pretty, I thought it was very prominent when I walked the block.
I feel like he's addressed that with the dormer elements. I mean, we have thoughts on the varying degrees of success, but there is that they're breaking the plane, and then the gable's just such a super traditional roof shape, whether it's side facing or front facing, I don't see an issue.
Does that answer your question? I mean, is it, I understand that we can't, dictate, putting a gable in it, but I mean, is it rhythm of solids to voids? We're having this large rectangular, dark solid over, in the front facade. I don't know.
I think she was asking about the roof and.
No, right, he's talking about a different issue.
Oh, okay.
I think it is, I do think that element does apply, like that standard does apply to that, and I think it comes to a little bit what Stuart was mentioning is, does it meet that standard even at least at the minimum level, or does it exceed, expectations for that standard? And I think what we have as a commission have to say is, does it meet the standard, and that's kind of what our purview is related to. We're not here to obviously design the home.
Right.
We just have to ask ourselves, and if you feel it doesn't meet that standard, then I think that's the conversation we need to have now.
I want to add a little more to that discussion, which is that Standard 16, which makes it very clear that we're not to impose any particular architectural style. So we've accepted that this is a modern home and that meets the standards. And once you're in that area, it becomes a little more difficult to add some of the traditional elements. And to use an example, if there were a gable on top of that bay, I think it starts to head in more of a postmodern direction. And I applaud the mate on kind of threading the needle in terms of some nods to the traditional forms of the gabled roof, but then holding true to what it ultimately is a modern house.
Carl, do you want to explore? Do you want to discuss that?
I guess what it's just that vertical part of the bay seems so skinny compared to the large portion of, I mean, if somehow the proportion of those two could be better. But I mean, I don't know if I'm going too far into.
I mean, I don't think several of us have obviously brought up the proportions there, but again, I think we have been leaning towards is it compatible to, the neighborhood and the adjacent properties? Does it meet? So I think that should be evident in the way people vote on whether they feel that it meets the standards as a whole. If when we vote, which I assume is what the decision of the commission is to vote on this case tonight, we vote and you do feel that it does not meet the standards, I would ask that you state which standards you feel that it does not meet.
I just wanted to add that the point of compatibility, of the question of compatibility in my professional experience has been to consider the district as a whole and whether this building will undermine in some way the district through its design. And so I think the question is whether what we see in front of us is going to undermine the fundamental character defining features of the district. If it doesn't, then it's compatible.
If there are no other discussion items with commissioners, then I would like to ask if someone would be willing to make a motion. Go ahead, Mark.
With respect to 1210 Maple Avenue in the Ridge Historic District, 22 Pres 0081, I move that we issue a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a new two-story single-family residence and detached single-story two-car garage resulting from the prior subdivision, in accordance with applicable standards for construction 1 through 11, 13, 14, and 16.
Sarah, second. Jamie, seconds, and we will do a roll call vote for this. So Kate, if you would please do it.
And I'd like to see a continuance. I don't know how to do that necessarily. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me. It may be unpopular, but I just wanted to.
And since it's been moved and seconded, you can vote no for that reason. Commissioner Dean? Commissioner Morris?
Yes.
Commissioner Jacobs? Aye. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Dreller?
Aye.
Commissioner Reinhold?
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen?
First, I want to say that I'm not going to be voting for Susie Reinhold. Somehow, that kept me from this. Well, hold on.
Oh, there's a multitude of names in there. That's interesting.
Oh, good for you.
It's like a Rolodex.
It's been recycled, sorry. The back says, that's Susie Reinhold. Yeah, I've been in this position before, and I would like to abstain, understanding that abstaining is counted as a no vote. Is that correct, Susie?
I think they would prefer.
What?
If you abstain, you have to state the reason why, and it's usually a conflict of interest of some kind.
It's not a conflict. What it is, it's not a conflict of interest. It's just my feeling about the way in which the House meets the standards.
And I think that should probably be a no, Stuart.
All right, I'll vote no.
Commissioner Klein?
No.
Commissioner Simon?
Yes.
So I would like to ask, the motion carries, I believe it was.
The motion carries 6-3. Yeah.
Thanks, Kate. Do you need standards cited for this since the motion carried?
No.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Kipnis?
Well, thank you very much. This has been a little tricky. Margaret was not able to make it tonight. I will let her know, but we're very pleased, and we will do Evanston proud. And I think it will, at the end of the day, be a great addition to the city and the neighborhood, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So that is it for business tonight. We'll move on to the approval of the meeting minutes. Kate, do you want to take it away?
The minutes are from June 14th. I didn't receive any revisions or comments, if anyone has some now. Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes for June 14th? Jamie?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from June 14th.
Is there a second? Second is Alexa. So all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any abstentions or? Sarah abstained, and I assume.
I have to abstain because I was in two abstentions.
It's Amanda and Sarah. Second was Jamie, or I'm sorry, second.
Jamie made the motion.
Alexa second. Okay, the next items are the discussion. So Kate, do you want to update us?
Yeah, these, not really a ton of discussion, just kind of commission updates. The first is the downtown survey. We've had, I think, all commissioners except for Commissioner Ziem, who just joined us, who's also expressed interest, so I'll see what survey area she's interested in. And then I also think Commissioner Cohen, I need you to, if you have a preference, which area you survey, just let me know, and then I'll kind of form the teams, and then I'll send out like a poll for scheduling, because they don't have to happen concurrently or at the same time, and it can happen into the fall as well as sometimes a preferable time to do survey work. It'll likely be groups of 3 commissioners and then accompanied by Carlos and myself, so we'll have groups of 5 that'll do these. I don't know if I need a deadline necessarily. I'll reach out maybe later this week to Commissioner Zeman and comment and get your feedback. There were, I think, only a handful of members that had very specific routes, whether that be conflicts with their job or something similar about the properties. The rest were very flexible, so that'll kind of form the teams based on experience, making sure that we have someone with a really experienced background in architecture, at least in one person in each group. But yeah, we're moving forward.
Okay, and do we have any idea of when we would like to aim to do these? Is this something we're trying to do for the month of August, since we're not anticipating to have a meeting, or is this?
I think we could. The problem with the month of August has always been quorum issues. I know that both Carlos and myself are out on the alternating weeks in August as well. I mean, the fall is a wonderful time to do survey work. The fall and winter is an excellent time to take photographs. So
Okay.
I think just making sure we're prepared for that time.
Let's make sure we do it before Commissioner Simon leaves.
I don't think we want to be doing survey work in December necessarily, so.
I just don't want to miss it.
Go to Palm Beach for.
Okay, so we can all look for that doodle poll after you get your last response.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
There's 2 other items. One is just a commission training that the law department puts on. They've done this for a few of the other boards and commissions, and they've asked if the Preservation Commission is interested. I think it's a nice opportunity. They said it takes between 30 and 45 minutes. It basically reviews Robert's rules, the city's ethics, just kind of meeting procedure. It's a nice thing to do. I think especially because we have so many new commissioners that have come on the last 2 years.
Is this something they would want to do in person, or is this something that's done virtually?
I think that they prefer to just do it in person. It would probably just accompany your regular meeting, and it would probably, well, it doesn't have to, it could happen before the cases or after, it just depends.
Does the other commissioners have a feeling on this, that if they're, I don't think it's a bad idea for us to just get a refresher of the Robert's rules, and I don't think in my 5 years we've really had one recently, so.
I think it's a great idea. Let's put it on the schedule.
And the last item is the work plan subcommittee. We met, I guess, was that recently, July 7th, and we got through about half of the implementation section. I'll schedule a second in-person meeting because I thought that was a very efficient way to go through that and also explain kind of each initiative. So that's just the update there. It's taken a little longer than usual, but we are making really good progress. I would say September, October to bring to the full commission for discussions is very reasonable.
Excellent. Are there any other comments by commissioners, items for discussion? No? Okay. Carl?
Would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Stewart seconds, and it is 8:12 p.m. Assume all in favor. All right, thank you, everybody.